Australia is a gambling nation. You know, we are a nation of gamblers. Gambling is heavily normalised in our country. We have a punting culture, you know, and it's an old one as well. It's certainly by no means a new thing. It's widespread. It's available everywhere. It's available at all times. You know, 2 in 3 adult Australians engage in gambling every year. There has been statistics that have found that Australia is actually the largest gambling country in the world, and our expenditure per person in Australia is almost double that of most of the other large westernised countries in the world.
I don't know, you know, it's a hard thing because it is kept very, very secret, and that is a lot of the problem. It is kept very close to your heart. No one says much, so probably the broader community doesn't really know how bad it is. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's probably why it's not probably faced up to or dealt with that much, because people really don't tell anyone about it.
I think for this kind of addiction and other addiction, the problem is before you find out, it's too late sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's what we're dealing with here. Yeah.
It's about raising the awareness and having, you know, getting a conversation started about it. Because I think a lot of it, we're kind of either directly or indirectly affected by problem gambling in some way. But no one's having that conversation. Everyone's kind of like, oh, it's a private situation. I don't want to discuss it with anyone. So they keep it to themselves. And I think that's just the nature of problem gambling. You know, the secrecy, you know, the dishonesty around the gambling. It's all part of that, to keep that cycle going. That's all it does.
What I'm finding, more than any other area of dependency or addiction, however you call it, that with the gambling, it's the hardest one for people to acknowledge.
I grew up in a very good home. We had everything we needed growing up. In 2004, I enrolled in a local university in Perth and graduated with an accounting degree. I started working in an accounting firm in 2006 and worked my way from the bottom up. I worked hard. From a social point of view, in the past, the casino was a visit once every 3 months. Very moderate bets, $5, if that. Lost the money, had a good time, went home, and didn't really think much of it. Later, when I went in with $100 visits, I always left with $600-700 in my pocket, which I thought was smart at the time. In hindsight, it probably wasn't. And thinking that if I put in a larger capital investment, I'll come back with a larger win. Not that I needed the money to survive. If anything, it ended up being a thrill, an adrenaline rush to try and beat the system, because I thought I was working it out. So what was a $5 bet with a $100 capital investment became a $25 bet, and then became a $50 minimum, and became $100, until that $500 was going pretty quickly. But eventually, from a $500 capital investment, I made $17,500, which was good at the time. From there, the problem escalated.
You wouldn't say that there's any one, you know, reason or way that people come to experience problem gambling, but I think certainly for a lot of people it actually starts out as a recreational activity. You know, it's really quite harmless, and then over a period of time it then starts to perhaps escalate. You know, the amount that someone might be gambling, the amount of money that they're gambling with, it really differs from person to person to define at what point does it actually become a problem for them. I guess perhaps more generally you could say that whenever someone is spending perhaps more money or time than they can afford to, and that it's resulting in some degree of negative impacts or consequences either on themselves or on others, at that point you could probably say it's starting to become a problem for them.
Problem gambling for me has become apparent when we had the financial counselling services here. People were presenting issues about the reason why they lost their houses.
the reason why the car was repossessed, it's because they lost their money at the casino. When we see people coming in, they've already lost their money and they're at the end of that spectrum where nothing is left. I need to get help. I need to seek help from the financial counsellor because they don't have any other choice, because the bailiff is there at their house and taking all their possessions out.
As a community centre, I don't feel we let gambling in enough. It wasn't until we talked about the possibility of doing something with gambling that I really let the conversations around me in. And I had a young man here from a school doing work placement, and I heard different, and I thought this could be really good. So somehow the space is opened in the community centre to look at gambling without actually shining a spotlight on anyone.
Our role and the role of our neighbourhood centres is to address needs as they emerge. And problem gambling is absolutely an emerging issue.
Neighbourhood centres are important because they bring people together, they reduce isolation, they're the community builders.
The neighbourhood centres that Linkwest works with apply what is a preventative approach. So generally the idea is that programs run in the community to address issues like isolation, whatever the issues might be that affect a particular community before they get out of hand.
It's vital that the centres are aware of what their community needs are and engage with their communities. They are the ones that feed back to us the emerging issues. Our centres are grassroots organisations and they're usually the first ones to pick up emerging issues.
Problem gambling is a big issue that we are trying to get solutions for. We have newly arrived families here who are unemployed as well and who don't know what to do with their lives because it's a new country. And some of them have resorted to gambling because they just don't know at the moment what to do with themselves. That's what we're trying to address for new people to prevent that. So creating hopefully that hub here that they would come and think, look, instead of us going to do this gambling things, we can do some, say, conversational, you can attend conversational English class, we can attend a computer class because I don't know how to use the internet.
The message that we wanted to come out to our centres was, you could stay at home in front of your computer and gamble, or you could go step out into the world, join the community, be part of something that is fun and that is inclusive and that is exciting in a different way.
What I would like the participants to get from here is to raise awareness. We are holding these sessions for them to, for other people who are not in that situation yet to know the consequences if they go into that, into gambling, into problem gambling.
I think addressing the whole issue at a community level, at a space where people are familiar and comfortable with as an initial starting point is really important. I think we've got to claim back at a community level what we do in community, and I think this program has been an eye-opener in a sense that probably it's the least, all the other dependencies we work with, it's probably the least that we've let in. You hear things, but it hasn't really been opened up. People talk easy. So I'll say about someone, she's on speed and she's gone great. They talk about it. With gambling, they don't talk about it. You don't actually hear.
There's just that secrecy element of it. The partner doesn't know. The children don't really know the genuine circumstances that have been going on there. And for a lot of people, it is actually highly secretive. And people do carry this around with them, and it generates huge amounts of guilt and shame for them. And when things start to get to that point, especially if there has been perhaps a large accumulation of financial debt as a result of the gambling, ironically, what that actually does is often fuel even more gambling. The desperation leads people to try and actually win back what it is that they've lost, and it truly is a vicious cycle. The thing that got them into that circumstance to begin with then becomes the means of getting them out of that, And of course, the mathematical odds play out, and they find themselves often in an even worse circumstance.
Once you turned over your cash into casino chips, you just lost complete control of what the value of money is. It was a Monday to Friday activity after work for an hour and a half, 2 hours. To maintain personality at home, I couldn't stay too long or the wife might find out. So after a bad day at work, I'd get to the lights and decide whether to turn left and go to the casino or turn right and go home. Most of the time I picked to turn left and used the excuse that work was busy. Then one day I went into the casino, in with $2,000, and I lost it in 15 minutes. I thought, all right, I've got this corporate credit card, let's just take $500 for starters to see if we can try and recover a little bit back. So I took $500 from the ATM, managed to get within $100 of what I was chasing, and I lost a lot. Then I thought another $500, and that $500 went just as quickly as it came out of the machine. I've wondered to myself, what made me take that path? And I can safely say that the gambling completely consumed my thought processes. It gave me tunnel vision, where the end goal is to try and get the money back. Unfortunately, that's what spiraled into the chasing the losses cycle. Because once you get sucked in, you're sucked in. The ultimate intention was to pay all the money back, but I was digging a hole deeper and deeper. If I wasn't let go for non-performance from my job, I might still be doing it now. A penny wouldn't have dropped, and who knows what the size of the hole would be. There was one instance where I lost $6,000 in one sitting. I went to the car and I was just saying to myself, I'm not coming back to this place. This is it, I'm finished, I'm done. I wake up in the morning, finish work, and then took that left option, and it just kept going for a long time.
If you support them, is that stopping them coming to see people like you that get counselling? Like if you don't support them, they might have to go somewhere and get counselling to beat the addiction.
Yes, we can support them, but there has to be a line that's drawn in how we support them. And what we find is that if we are to support them financially in terms of their debts, then that's just going to enable their gambling. It's going to get them to continue to gamble.
With addiction, the person generally has to decide themselves that they want to change and they want to make the changes to escape from that addiction. It doesn't matter what the addiction is. So if we go in there and start helping to pay debts off for people, one of the things we do is actually exacerbate that situation because they're not hitting that rock bottom level where they've decided I can't go any lower, I need to do something different.
I was very surprised when they had something here with the community centre on gambling and that. I was surprised because you just don't see it. It is so normalised that people don't always stand up and say, look, this is an issue, we've got some programs going. It's the first time I've ever heard of a program going for gambling in the community. And I guess because we do just accept it, that's normal, that it's, all of a sudden there's something here, which is fantastic. And I think they need to be doing that in the local communities to start with, is a wonderful thing. And I'm really, I was so surprised when that happened. I'm really pleased about it.
The feedback from the centres that wanted to be part of this program was that there was a problem, but you don't really know that until you start running activities and encouraging people to come in and talk about it. And that engagement did highlight that there are definitely some quite serious issues out there in the community around online gambling in particular.
One of the great benefits of the Beyond Gambling program that we've run. And in fact, one of the things that perhaps we hadn't anticipated was going to happen was that it acted as a bit of a conversation starter. So an issue like problem gambling, which is not talked about a lot, became a topic that members in the community started having conversations around. That was one of the great benefits of the program, the fact that it gave communities the chance to an opening into this issue.
One of the things that became very obvious whilst running the project is that gambling has an incredible stigma to it, and it takes a long time for them to feel comfortable to go in to a centre and talk about it, and it takes a long time for them to understand that centres are welcoming places where there will be no judgment, and that people from all walks of life go there and many different issues are addressed.
It takes a lot to be able to say, I'm affected by this problem, and that's why it is really important for programs like this to have the chance to actually become part of the day-to-day running of a centre or the day-to-day life of a community.
When it comes to a person confronting and perhaps looking at the prospect of changing their gambling behaviour, for a lot of people there is a pretty significant amount of denial that might have been going on for them, which has helped sustain and perpetuate that behaviour. And it's really a very big step for a lot of people to fully start to acknowledge and appreciate the extent to which they actually perhaps have a very genuine problem with their gambling. And unfortunately for a lot of people, because of that denial and that reluctance to change, sometimes it actually takes circumstances to get to really quite a significant level before they're almost forced to have to change. And what that can look like for a lot of people can be really a very serious situation. So we would always encourage people, if possible, to try and look at changing earlier than later before the negative consequences get too serious.
In total, it was 140 grand I stole. It was only 1 year after being let go that the cops actually rang me up to come in for an interview. That day, 2 weeks before going to the cop shop, I stopped gambling. And I haven't gambled in the last 6 months, and I don't intend to gamble again. When the police officer said, "Now I'm charging you with stealing as a servant," that's when the pin dropped. Saving grace from the whole exercise was the police officer actually said to me that I have a gambling problem. They gave me the number for gambling help, because to an outside person it was quite clear, and since then I've been seeking gambling counselling from Centrecare, and that's been going good. Currently I'm unemployed, waiting for court proceedings to be finalised, and allocated the date, facing a sentence. Maximum of 10 years, but within the range of 2.5 to 3 years is what I'm facing. I have a young daughter at the moment, and another one on the way. The fact that I'm going to miss the first birthday is heartbreaking. And the fact that I'm probably going to miss the birth of the second one is even more heartbreaking. But it is what it is. If I could turn back time, I certainly would take a different path altogether. Everything else would be the same except the gambling. And I think the shame and guilt of having a problem is what holds everyone back. Because when you go into a cycle that revolves around gambling, it's your focus above everything else. You're thinking, what next? What game next? How can I win more money? How can I make that money back? Those are the types of questions you ask yourself as a gambler. My question to the wider community is there enough being done out there to help intervene with someone who has a gambling addiction or a gambling problem?